What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the reveal of the number 12 team in my 2019 NFL Power Rankings, and oh, how the times have changed here. Last year, I ranked this team 6th. I was told that this legitimate Super Bowl contender, I had ranked them too low. Last year, they have a bit of an off season, don't meet those expectations, and I expect that I will be accused of ranking this team too high now at number 12. The reality is this team still has a ton of talent. Last year just was never going to happen. Their offensive line coach died in the offseason. One of their most impactful defensive players had to leave the team for personal issues. They went through an offensive coordinator. It was just a disaster. They really misevaluated who Kirk Cousins was, not bringing him in. We'll dive into if that was all worth it later. But they didn't address the offensive line at all when they signed Kirk Cousins, who can't move. They just screwed a lot up last year and had a lot of breaks not go their way. So the conversations this video are going to be about, can they get back to that? Who do they need to step up and, borderline break out for them to become a legitimate playoff contender? So as we go, if you learn something, if you enjoy, please do hit that like button. It's the easiest way to support the channel. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications as well so you don't miss an upload of these deep dives as we go. Also, if you want to support the channel and you're shopping for tickets this summer, be it baseball games, going to a football game in the fall, use promo code FranchiseGuy on SeatGeek. You'll save $20 on your first purchase and help me out in the process, so definitely go check that out. If you are new to the series, what we do is we go through the roster, we rank each position, how they stack up against the rest of the league. While we do that, you will be looking at my own custom Madden roster. So yes, it is a video game, but these are my own ratings, and they accurately show how I perceive each player. And it's just a nice little graphic to use. After that, we go through the schedule, we talk game by game, and my win total expectations for this team, and then we'll talk about division odds, Super Bowl odds, all that good stuff, so make sure you stick around for the end of the video. So we're going to do this just a little bit different in terms of the order of all of this, because to be completely honest here, we know what Kirk Cousins is, we know these receivers are great, we know this defense at worst is going to be really solid with a bunch of talent and Mike Zimmer, who's one of the best defensive minds in the NFL. We know all that about the Vikings. It's the reason they have a nice floor. But the ceiling that this team showed at times with the explosive passing game from Kirk Cousins to these receivers, it's why we got so excited about this team in the first place. But this offensive freaking line was so bad last year, just like I said it would be. When everyone was picking this team to win the Super Bowl, it's like, wait a minute. Case Keenum was running around for his life last year. He just happens to be okay at doing that because he's a mobile guy. Kirk Cousins is going to freak out at times when he's just, letting the floodgates open from the pass rush. And while we saw at times this offense look extremely explosive, and that's a big reason I think I am somewhat optimistic about this team, they couldn't block anyone. So I think that the first conversation we have to have about this Vikings team is this offensive line, because it's the only thing that I can confidently sit here and say that I don't know what we're getting. I ranked them 27th, which is an upgrade from last year. It really is, because you look at the historical data. I know there's a lot of bad offensive lines in the league right now, but the Vikings last year were one of the worst offensive lines in the freaking history of the NFL. And the big question for me is, you got to back up a little bit here, but we keep saying this in our deep dives. You got 3 tiers of offensive lines. You got lines that help you do what you want to do. You got lines that just allow you to do what you want to do. And then offensive lines that get in your way and prohibit you from consistently doing what you want to do. And obviously that 3rd tier is where this Vikings team came in last year. So can they, get themselves up into that 2nd tier and just allow this offensive line to just be average, just get in someone's way and allow this passing game to kind of thrive a little bit. They don't need to be the Eagles line or the Saints line to do that, but they cannot be what they were last year. So you got Riley Reef at left tackle. He's the definition of a replacement level starter. I think a lot of Vikings fans would have loved to upgrade that position, but the reality is there's just not any tackle depth in the NFL right now. At least you have a starting caliber player there, but he is by no means a strength. Then at right tackle, this team was actually able to find some promise there at that position. And I say promise because Brian O'Neill is a player that I like. I did a first-round redraft from the 2018 draft, and Brian O'Neill actually snuck into the first round for me. So I do project that he's going to be a player. But he was a raw project coming out. Yes, he played great last year, and in all likelihood, he will be as good and hopefully will be better than he was last year. But the reality is there's no guarantee there. He was a raw guy coming out. It's a small sample size. He could regress a little bit in terms of his production. So we'll see what you get there. You've got some excitement there, and he's obviously a big pivot point of how good this line can be at that starting right tackle position. Then you got to talk about the center. You got big changes here. Garrett Bradbury, a first-round pick. Really no reason he can't be a top 10 center at some point. A really great athlete. Drew some Jason Kelce comparisons. Kind of interesting that you actually would compare him to Jason Kelce. And then Brian O'Neill with that athleticism and length coming out, kind of like Lane Johnson, the Eagles' right tackle. And obviously if they can reach that upside, now we're talking. But if you want to talk about that kind of upside, there's question marks there. So I expect Garrett Bradbury to be a good player. At the same time, he's a rookie center. There's a lot to learn in terms of calling protections. He's not just going to have a transition to blocking ACC defenders to blocking NFL defenders, but he's also going to be dealing with, the adversity of being a rookie center and calling everything out for this team. So you could expect definitely a learning curve there. And then with the guards, it's really interesting. So, at least you don't have Danny Phantom in ghost mode playing right guard anymore. Mike Remmers is gone. Like it literally at times felt like a Madden glitch where the right guard was just not on the field. So you get Josh Klein in here, who I think Titans fans would tell you don't get too excited about that, but I do think it is a slight upgrade there at right guard. Nothing you get too excited about, certainly. He really took a step back last year, but he has been a starting caliber guard throughout his career. And then at left guard, you have Pat Elflein, who's been this team's center, converting over there to guard. And he showed some promise, but really was one of the worst centers in the NFL last year. You would project now that going to guard where he doesn't have to deal with the mental aspect quite as much. He can focus on his technique, taking orders, and just beating the guy in front of him. Hopefully he can be better, but there's certainly no guarantee there. I liked Drew Samia, the guard out of Oklahoma, a fourth-round pick. He can be a wild card here as well, but obviously no guarantee being a fourth-round pick and a rookie. You got some depth. Brett Jones at center, Dakota Dozier at guard. At tackle, Rashad Hill has played. They drafted Olasemeka Udo in the 6th round. No one you're really confident in rolling out there, but they have thrown so many darts at the depth here. You do have a pretty deep room comparatively to the rest of the league. So what do I expect? I expect a slight upgrade from last year. I expect a line that is still going to struggle and is going to front any pessimism you might have about this offense. That said, there is a certain upside now to this team that I did not have last year. I did not expect Brian O'Neill to be a starting caliber player right away. They now have Garrett Bradbury, Drew Samia could be a player. Pat Elflein could resurrect his career at left guard. All of a sudden, if those all work out, which is a big if, from left guard to right tackle, you all of a sudden have an offensive line that can get into that second tier and be an offensive line that allows you to do what you want to do. And that would mean the world to this team. But I don't expect that to happen. You are asking a lot of things to go right here. So an upgrade from last year, but I'm certainly not too excited about this offensive line. So now we can transition to Kirk Cousins. And on one hand, there's not really much to say. He is exactly what I said he would be here and what most of us thought he would be. He's a guy that can't move. He needs protection. He needs receivers to get open. He doesn't have those elite qualities to see throwing windows before they open up. He kind of needs everything laid out in front of him. That said, there's a reason he was paid $30 million. He has an awesome arm and is very accurate. In terms of just the ability to throw a football accurately with authority from the pocket and command the whole field, he is one of the 20 most impressive humans on earth. There's a lot of holes to his game as well. Was he worth the $30 million contract? I think there was. I am trying to project here some optimism about this offense because if they can block some people, you do have much more of a ceiling from this offense than you ever had with Case Keenum, because Case Keenum just can't use the whole field. Kirk Cousins at least can. Yes, $30 million was a lot to fully guarantee, but it's the best option they had. And I do think that this team can still succeed with Kirk Cousins, even though there are people that don't seem to believe that. So 16th for me for the quarterback. I don't think Kirk Cousins is really going to make or break this team's season. He really is what he is. It does really pivot around this offensive line and what they can do. And then the wide receivers, again, we know exactly what these guys are. Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen. The Browns have gotten into this conversation now going to get Odell Beckham, but probably still the best wide receiver duo in the NFL. Both of these guys, extremely versatile. Thielen, a little bit of a bigger-bodied slot guy. Stephon Diggs, a little quicker, maybe a little more versatile as a route runner, but both of these guys very versatile. Both can play inside and out. You got to credit this coaching staff for developing a certain asset that these guys have. Both of these guys would come in the top 5 for me in terms of wide receivers that truly attack the football when it's in the air. They don't sit back and wait on the ball to come to them. And maybe it just kind of naturally developed playing with Case Keenum, whose balls kind of just floated a little bit. They had to be a little more aggressive. But it's translated to this year. They really jump up for the ball. They'll soak up contact and come down with the ball. And it's really incredible to watch. Behind those two, you got worries. You look at some games down the stretch, teams were just bracketing these two and just begging someone else to beat them. That guy's never going to be Kyle Rudolph. I just did my most overrated player on each team. For me, it's Kyle Rudolph. I cannot possibly come up with an explanation for why this team paid him other than for what he does with the Minnesota community. He doesn't block as an oversized tight end. He's slow and can't run routes. He offers literally nothing after the catch. He almost always goes down on first contact. Yeah, he's a nice pair of hands, but I can pick that up off the street for a league minimum contract. It literally blows my mind that they extended him, especially after they drafted Irv Smith here. So can Irv Smith be that number 3 option? Or is it going to be B.C. Johnson, Dylan Mitchell? Notice how I didn't say Laquan Treadwell there. Like, Laquan Treadwell, dude, are you just hanging out and playing video games with Andrew Wiggins all offseason? Put in some work, man. You have all the physical talent in the offseason. Where's the development? Where's the effort? There's none of it. I don't even know if Laquan Treadwell's going to make this team. He was a liability for this team last year. So this team needs someone to step up. It's either, to me, I do actually feel pretty confident saying that either Irv Smith or B.C. Johnson are going to be an impact in the short to intermediate passing game as slot options, whether that's Irv Smith as a tight end or a slot wide receiver, or B.C. Johnson out of the slot, where he actually was really under the radar out of Colorado State. He was just a very steady slot receiver, that prototypical route runner with really good shiftiness and ability to get open in that short to intermediate passing game. I think he very well could win out that starting slot job and be a very solid weapon for Kirk Cousins, who had a lot of success with a similar player in Jamison Crowder in Washington. So keep an eye on B.C. Johnson. If I have a bold prediction, it's that he's going to have a bit of a breakout season as a rookie. Dylan Mitchell can play too. I liked him too, but I really did just have a higher grade on B.C. Johnson, so we'll see how that all plays out. Then you got a bunch of white dudes competing at slot receiver. Chad Beebe, Brandon Zylstra, Jordan Taylor. They're trying to find the next Adam Thielen there. And then you have a couple blocking tight ends in David Morgan and Tyler Conklin. So the wide receiver room does come in tied for third. I think that speaks absolute volumes to what I think about Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen. But they do need someone to step up as a third option, because teams down the stretch just double and triple team the top 2 guys and dared someone else to make a play, and they couldn't. I do look at Irv Smith and B.C. Johnson, though, as good pickups for this team that can make a bigger impact on this team than most rookies you would expect. So that's we got to talk about the running back. It's often easy to forget about this position that I just don't put a lot of weight into. This is going to sound really low, tied for 27th at running back. Do not freak out, please, Vikings fans. Dalvin Cook, when healthy, is not the 27th best running back in the NFL. He is borderline top 10. I see everything you're seeing. He is a very impressive runner of the football. It is literally all health for Dalvin Cook. He is a true 3-down back if he could just stay healthy. Those were concerns and why this team was able to get him in the second round. He's really not proving people wrong about the concerns about him being able to stay on the field that had him drop out of the first. So really great player in Dalvin Cook. I do not project him to stay healthy, and then I have some very major concerns here. You draft Alexander Madison in the third round. Did not make a lot of sense to me. I did not see that out of him. The slow 40 really backed up unimpressive athlete that I saw on field, so maybe he proves me wrong there. They're looking for that grinder, that physical player that can stay healthy here, be this team's replacement for Latavius Murray. I get what they're looking for in Madison. I don't know if they found it. They also have Mike Boone, Rock Thomas, good pickups as undrafted free agents last year, but no one here that I'm really excited about, being either a runner between the tackles, outside the tackles, or catching the football. It's a whole lot of meh after Dalvin Cook. Obviously, if he can stay healthy, they will shatter this ranking of 27th and probably get into the top 10 because Dalvin Cook is a monster. I just really do not expect him to stay healthy. So that is the offensive outlook. They come in 20th. This is why they moved on from Case Keenum. They wanted to get into that top 16 offense range, right? I don't think it's going to take a whole lot for them to do that. You need that third slot weapon to step up, or Dalvin Cook to stay healthy, or you need O'Neal and Bradbury to be studs, or you need Josh Klein or one of these offensive linemen to really offer something you didn't have last year. It's not going to take a whole lot for this to be a top 16, top 10 offense. And that is why I think I do rank this team ahead of a team like Dallas, who is very similar. Very good defensive team, but I think the Vikings offense has a certain upside that a team like Dallas with Dak Prescott and a lack of vertical threats just doesn't necessarily have. The last thing I will say as we rank the offensive coach and culture here at tied for 19th is with Kevin Stefanski, Gary Kubiak with that zone run mentality, and then of course what Mike Zimmer wants to do with this team, which is old school run the ball and play defense. To me, this offense is not built to complement that. This is an offensive line that is built for pass pro and not run blocking. It is a quarterback and wide receiver duo that have vertical upside and a running back that cannot stay healthy if you want to pound him into the ground. So I hope that they don't remain too stubborn about the run game in 2019, where the run game just doesn't really move the needle. But then as we transition here to the defense, you don't really need that offense to be a top 10 offense, even if it just might have the upside of that in an ideal situation. Because this defense, which we rank third here, is still going to be very, very good and cause a lot of problems for opponents because they are, deep at all three levels. They have Mike Zimmer, who's one of the best defensive minds in the NFL, and they have, in my opinion, the best home field in terms of crowd noise in the entire NFL. So this is still a defensive culture here, despite some of the bigger names at this team, being more on the offensive side of the ball at this point. All of that said, there are some different things here. You've got the three really stars from that team with Everson Griffin, Linval Joseph, and Harrison Smith are all on the other side of 30 now. We're 2 years removed from them being in their primes, and they've all shown some signs of regression, so you might need some other pieces to step up here. So let's talk about who that might be. You start with the run defense. It will be solid. Like we said, Linval, not exactly what he used to be, still a very good run defender at least, but he is on the opposite side of 30 where, for one, he has shown regression in last season, and that is about the age where these guys, especially a guy like Linval that has had injury questions, will start to regress. That said, Linval should still be a dominant interior run defender. You've got some depth here. Shamar Stephen, Jaleel Johnson might make a list of potential breakouts now with him getting some more opportunity in terms of playing time here. You drafted Armon Watts in the 6th round. You have Jalen Holmes, a 4th-round pick out of Ohio State last year. He's a bit of a wild card. He's going to play some edge, some interior. It'll be interesting to see what he looks like this year. This team seemingly feels pretty good about the interior line here. Maybe they just didn't have any money at all to spend here, but they're kind of going with the internal guys this year after letting Sheldon Richardson go. And then you also like what Neal Hunter, Everson Griffin, these linebackers, the secondary. There's no doubt that this Mike Zimmer defense is going to play the run very well. We don't really need to spend a whole lot of more time talking about the run defense. Now, the pass rush here is going to be where I might have just some questions. They're going to come in tied for 14th. This is a pass rush that back in that 2017 season would have ranked in the top 3 to 5. You got to Neal Hunter here. He's the first name you're going to talk about. He's a total stud. He keeps getting better every year. He's still really young despite being in year 2 of his 2nd contract. I think he's only like 24. Now, he's not game-breaking elite. He's certainly not Khalil Mack, Von Miller. He's also not the same as like DeMarcus Lawrence, Myles Garrett. He is a true number 1 edge rusher. He's somewhere around the 10th to 20th best edge rusher. But some of these questions start to come in here when you talk about Everson Griffin, who stepped away from the game last year, personal, mental health, potentially like drug-related issues. I'm not going to make any assumptions about what happened there. For all intents and purposes, he's back with the team. He feels like he owes this team something. So I do expect him to play a solid role on this defense. I'm certainly projecting him to get his share of playing time here. But he is on the other side of 30. And you expect that he will not be that true number 1 pass rusher like he was a couple years ago. I think that's all pretty fair. Then you have, sticking on the edge, Stephen Weatherly. This is kind of interesting because his career is trending upwards. He's in a contract season. He really played pretty well when Everson Griffin left last year. So is Stephen Weatherly actually better than Everson Griffin at this point? Only time will tell there, but you could do worse than Stephen Weatherly as your 3rd guy on the edge. Then you've got some competition. Ada Runa, a 6th-round pick. Tayshawn Bauer, Afedi Odenigbo. And then keep an eye on Carter Schultz if he can make this team as well. So you do have some depth on the edge, but you do have some concerns on the inside here. Linval, I'm really just not expecting a whole lot as a pass rusher. He was never an elite guy on the interior. He was a good pile driver. I don't know if he's got that same explosion anymore. I more consider Linval just a run defender. You're really pointing to, I don't know. Jalen Holmes, does he step up as an interior rusher, a 4th-round pick last year? Jaleel Johnson, does he take that breakout? Or Armon Watts, a 6th-round pick? Obviously, those are all question marks. I think there's a certain upside with any of those 3, but you don't know what you're getting there. One interesting conversation that is something I think this team should strongly consider is running some more multiple looks. It's going to sound scary to Mike Zimmer because he's a stubborn coach to begin with, but he knows what he knows. But I think this team would really benefit from running some more 3-3 odd looks with, obviously, Daniil with his hand in the dirt, but maybe move Everson Griffin inside a little bit more. He is a little bit of a bigger guy, getting up there in age. Maybe, you play him as like a 4 technique or head up on the tackle, and then actually wrap Anthony Barr around as a legitimate off-ball 3-4 style outside linebacker, exactly the position the New York Jets were prepared to pay him, like $40 million to play. And that's also the position Anthony Barr was drafted as, an edge rusher. I think that could be a path for this team to get into the top 10 pass rush conversation yet again. I don't know if in Mike Zimmer's traditional 4-2 nickel defense that this pass rush is really going to scare a ton of teams. It's not bad. It's certainly not bad. It's very good. But this was an elite pass rush in 2017. That is really where I don't see this defense replicating its production in 2017. But then you look at the second level here, these linebackers, very good. I'm a big Eric Kendricks believer. I would consider him one of the more underrated players in this league. If anything, he does need to stay healthy here. But then you have Anthony Barr, who I've consistently said is overrated. People have slowly kind of caught up to that belief. he's a bit of an awkward player, right? He's a freak athlete. He's one of the best Madden players in the NFL, but he does not have the traditional off-ball instincts. He doesn't have great understanding of zone breakdowns and being in the right place at the right time and coverage. He doesn't thump as well. He never grew up with that middle linebacker mentality, the see-ball, hit ball between the trenches. Now, he has that outside the tackles, and, he's one of the best heat-seeking missiles in the NFL, and that's where he does bring value to this team, is as a blitzer, as a guy that can shut down screens. But he's not a traditional off-ball linebacker. He does have this role in this defense, and he's a player. And when you have a guy like Eric Kendricks next to him, it certainly helps out. But if anything happens to Kendricks, I don't trust Barr to be the signal caller and the true middle linebacker for this team. So then you have Ben Gideon. He kind of falls in that like Blake Martinez, Preston Brown category of stiffer, run-defending linebackers. Cameron Smith kind of, he was a 5th-round pick out of USC. He kind of drew some of those knocks as well for me. But you could do a lot worse for 3rd and 4th linebackers. Then you have some more traditional, will linebackers or whatever, the smaller guys, the really good athletes. So you got Kentrell Brothers, Eric Wilson, Richard Cliette, Devontae Downs. They'll all compete. Hard to say who ends up winning those jobs out. Probably Brothers and Eric Wilson. You also have to mention Hercules Mataafa. He was a good undrafted free agent pickup from last year. He's actually kind of listed as an off-ball linebacker here. To me, they're kind of converting into that Anthony Barr role backup as kind of a flexible blitzer, kind of straight line, bigger body dude. I don't know what his outcome's going to be this year. So they do come in tied for 7th. For linebacker, it's a very good, second level of this defense. Then at corner, Xavier Rhodes. I've spent enough time on this channel saying Xavier Rhodes is overrated. I think time has really, that take has aged well over time. He's a stiffer guy. He gets grabby. He's got flaws. He's a very good corner. He's probably a little overpaid, a little overrated at this point, but he's not bad. He's a very good corner, and he's at times when he's up against bigger bodied wide receivers can just be shut down. Some Vikings fans are still going to give me a hard time about that. It's fine. I've held this opinion for 3 years and nothing has changed based on his film for me. I love the depth that this team has at cornerback. How much time have we spent on this channel talking about the importance of the depth at corner? How you got to have 4 or 5 deep at this position, not just because it's a position where injuries are common because these guys are more slender, but just a lot of packages are going to have 4 of these guys on the field. And your coverage unit is only as good as your weakest link against good, smart teams that can attack your weakest link. So Trey Waynes probably set to be the starter here. That's fine. He's a freak athlete, former 1st-round pick. Some weeks he looks like a top 10 corner. Some weeks he looks like he needs to be benched. He's just very inconsistent. He relies on his athleticism a lot, but he's fine. He could do a lot worse for a number 2 corner. But I love the depth here. You got Mike Hughes, a bit of a wild card here. He's going to compete both at outside corner and in the nickel with Mackenzie Alexander, who we'll get to in a second. Holton Hill. Hot take here. I think there's a chance. I'm not, planting my flag on this one, but I want to throw this out there. I think there's a chance Holton Hill is the best cornerback on this team. Just a freak athlete in terms of quickness, which is a much more useful skill set as opposed to Xavier Rhodes, who's a little faster in a straight line. Holton Hill also has that length. He has a ton of upside. And, if this team knew they could get a player like Holton Hill as an undrafted free agent, they probably don't spend a 1st-round pick on Mike Hughes. So excited to see how Holton Hill can follow up his 2nd season. You also have Chris Boyd here, who this team, I think, pretty obviously took because of the success they had with Holton Hill. Boyd, very similar. Maybe not elite straight line speed, but crazy quickness and agility skills. Also some similar kind of off-the-field questions with Holton Hill, also coming out of Texas. So maybe they can repeat what they got there. So I'm a big fan of the depth and competition you've got at corner. Mike Zimmer's going to have a really fun time coaching these guys up and going to love the depth you have there. We mentioned Mackenzie Alexander. He's probably going to be the starting slot corner here. Right now I see him as a top 15 slot corner. tons of inconsistencies in his career, but really, proved a lot of things last year and the last 2/3 of last season. You would hope that in a contract year for him, he can continue to play at that high level. And then at safety, it's no joke. You got Harrison Smith, still probably a top 5 to 7 safety. He's on the other side of 30 now, so maybe a little bit of regression. But you're definitely still afraid of him. And then Anthony Harris here, a bit of a wild card. An undrafted free agent in 2015, but was PFF's like 7th or 8th rated safety last year. So if he can repeat that, anytime you have an undrafted player really break out like that, you do have a little bit of hesitation, especially since he's been in the league since 2015. But nothing on film would tell you that he can't be at worst a starting caliber safety, but he showed us last year that he could be a hell of a lot more than that too. The depth at safety, a little bit of a question mark with Sendejo on his way out, with George Iloka on his way out. Again, that Cousins contract, you just got to start letting some guys go. But when you can find an Anthony Harris to break out, that's where you can easily replace that. So you got Jaron Kearse, a 7th round pick in 2016, a bit of an oversized, well, I don't know how to say oversized, just a big-bodied box safety type. You got Darren Smith, Marcus Epps, a 6th round pick. If anything happened to Smith or Harris, I would almost expect Zimmer to dial up McKenzie as more of like a safety. But hopefully they just keep those two safeties healthy. So you're really combining here with this entire defense a lot of talent on every level. You don't have any true holes. You're going to get schemed up and coached up very well from Mike Zimmer. And then you pair all that with just an incredible home field advantage, and I don't see any reason this can't be a top 5 defense. A lot can be said, too, about just continuity for a defense. It's all the same bodies, the same names, the same coaches here, and you just develop that chemistry together, and I think that goes to say a lot, and it's a big reason this defensive coaching culture comes in second, and that, at the end of the day, is the number one reason I rank this team 12th and still have playoff expectations for this Vikings team. So that's the breakdown. Let's look at the schedule here before we get out of here. Atlanta at home to kick off the season. You love that. Hopefully they can take care of business there. The first half of the season, it's kind of a little back and forth. Interesting stretch there with Philly at home. That's never going to be an easy game, but you love to get them at home. And then at Detroit. I look at those two games to be a bit of a pivotal part of the schedule. One hard thing about this team, though, is they have really 3 almost impossible road games: at Kansas City, at Dallas, at Seattle. This is the kind of team that does not travel well. Defensive teams are always better at home, and also just offensive lines don't travel because of snap. It really is a lot to be said about cadence, crowd noise, snap counts. The other team's pass rushers just get going, and when you already have a disadvantage on the offensive line, history proves year in year that teams with bad offensive lines just do not travel very well. So I do have them losing some of those tough games on the road, and then they finish at home with Green Bay and Chicago. It's going to be, I see this division as a 3-sided die, and they're going to need to pull away both of those wins at the end of the year, I think, if they want to win this division, because I think that's going to be some meaningful matchups there at the end. So their over-under is 9 wins. I think that's pretty much spot on. I really don't have a ton of strong takes about this Vikings team. It's definitely a playoff caliber team, but they play in arguably the best division in the NFL and certainly the harder conference. So it's just going to be tough. It's going to be really tough for them to get into the playoffs as a fringe team. I'm not going to sit here and say they can or cannot do it. When we finish up these deep dives, I will have my full predictions videos, so we'll see if I do think this team is ultimately in the playoffs. As far as their division odds are concerned, plus 210 on the division, it's not the worst. Like I said, 3-sided die. Really, with their division odds, their Super Bowl odds at 28-1, odds to make the playoffs about even. They're over/under at 9. Like, Vegas is kind of, on the same page with me with this Vikings team. It's kind of like, they're probably not a playoff team, but if their offensive line can just, be all right, they probably are. Like, it's just a hard team to put a beat on right now, especially given the competition in the division and the conference. So, Vikings fans, I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say. Rest of you NFL fans, am I too high, too low on this Vikings team? Do you think they make the playoffs? Let me know in the comments. Hit that like button. Cheers as always, guys, and we'll see you for the next one. Peace.